Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan along with Kathryn Peterson. And as we do each and every week, we try to bring you, the entrepreneurial leader, a topic that you can take, you can apply, you can share. And we hope this week is no exception. You know, as we've gone through this season, if you're following us as these episodes are dropping, we're helping you prepare for the year ahead. And a lot of that has been around some building champions exercises that Kathryn and I have worked on for years. And we want to share them with you. And we want you to understand not just what they are, but why they exist and how they might be helpful to you. And we're at that spot in the process where you've probably reflected on the year you've had. You've probably created a plan for the year ahead, and you might already be well into execution on your first quarter plan. But a key ingredient to that planning process is going to take you to your calendar. At some point, you've got to decide, where does this fit? When am I going to do these things? And if I'm going to do them consistently, how do I create a time block that allows me to know going into my day and my week what to expect so that I can create a rhythm and a routine and maybe even a habit out of these things? I'm sure we'll unpack a lot of that, but you've got the idea here. And so I'm going to bring in my fabulous co-host, Kathryn Peterson. Hello, Kathryn.
Hi, good to see you as always. And this is going to be a fun topic for us to go through together, and hopefully, people learn a lot.
Yeah, I hope so too, because some of our episodes are definitely, deep thought, and some of our episodes are going to be more just good old fashioned roll up your sleeves and execute. And I think this one doesn't require as much deep thought. So if you like an episode where it's like, hey, just give me some really practical direction that I can take from this topic and go run with it and apply it, you're going to love this one, because I think time blocking falls into that category. But let's start with the obvious right up front. I do think this phrase divides the house from the get-go. In fact, maybe some of you listening had that first thought of, time blocking. This is not my favorite topic, but I've committed to listen to these guys, so I'm going to hear what they have to say. And let's talk about it. Time blocking evokes that response. Some people love it, some people just
Mhm.
don't. How do you feel when you hear time blocking, Kathryn? What emotion does that evoke for you?
That's a great question. I would say I still am not like, woohoo, time blocking, but I also know that it's kind of necessary. Let's call it brushing our teeth.
Hmm.
Like, I don't go, oh, I'm so excited to brush my teeth. I mean, maybe some days I feel that way. But most of the time you do it because it's part of what you have to do. And I know that a lot of time blocking, now that I've done it for so long, is kind of already set into my calendar. So it's not as difficult as it used to be at the beginning. I think the first time you do it is the hardest. And then every time after that, it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it that way, because you offered a third option, which isn't the I hate it or I love it. It's just a necessary part of the process, and that's fair. So maybe that's a better place to stay. Is let's stay in the middle of the road. If you happen to come from either of those extremes, the only encouragement I would give you is, at some point, you're operating in a world that expects you to follow some version of a schedule. So no matter how entrepreneurial you are, maybe you started your own business so you didn't have a boss to report to, and then you later found out, oh, no, I do. They're called my customers. They expect me to show up on time. They expect me to be available when they call. So we all have a schedule that we are required to honor and respect. And a time block is literally just transferring my plan into a calendar format so that I can prepare myself for what's coming in the day or the week ahead. So let's just talk about the function of a time block. You've probably heard me talk about the difference between a perfect week and an ideal week. Hopefully, you've embraced my love of the ideal week, because I'm just pretty sure nothing is ever perfect. But maybe I'm wrong, Kathryn. Have you decided to land on a perfect week or an ideal week when it comes to your time block?
Yeah, mine might be ideal. If there's a step below ideal, let's get out that thesaurus again.
A
Then
hopeful time block?
full-time block might be closer, but we can all shoot for what we can do. And obviously our days in mortgage are not do not always go to plan.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. So I think right off the bat, let's just dispel that myth. I know that that phrase gets used a lot by productivity experts, especially if you've gone online. Maybe you've gone on YouTube and you've followed somebody's ideology and you'll hear the perfect week. And what they're implying is, hey, if you could design a week to go exactly like you'd want it to, what would it look like? Well, I want to caution you that words have power. And if you embrace the ideology of a perfect week, you're also going to feel some struggle when just what you described happens. You know, you go into Monday morning with a plan, and suddenly the client that you didn't expect to get a call from calls, and they're not happy. And suddenly you've got to rally around the need from that call. But that means whatever you were planning to do next isn't going to happen next. And now the dominoes start to fall. If you're a perfectionist by nature, that will torpedo your productivity and your attitude for that day. So I want to give you some latitude on this one. You know, I think if you, what did you call it, a hopeful week? You know, put together and design something with a spirit of a word that works for you to retain your flexibility. Because the truth is, real life is going to happen despite this plan that you have for the week. And no matter what schedule you come up with, if it doesn't have some flexibility, you're going to struggle. So maybe that's going to be my first tip of time blocking is don't pack your day with back-to-back activities. Like I see
Mhm.
this so many times where clients show me a time block. You know, okay, I've got my plan, it's all figured out, and it's going to go here to here to here to here. I mean, Kathryn, you joke about brushing your teeth as maybe just one of those mundane things. It's not exciting, or I'll get time blocks where brushing your teeth is time blocked, along with get a snack, along with go to the bathroom. I don't know. It's so overdone that I think, my gosh, where do you, is breathing in your time block as well? And so that's going to be my first caution is don't overbake your time block. Try to keep it limited to the main things, not the mundane things. And so if you can separate the main from the mundane, you'll be able to create what I like to call margin. And margin is simply space. If you're using the visual of a calendar, it's white space. It's that open space that wasn't scheduled for anything at all. So that's going to be my first tip on this one is let's don't overdo the time block because that is a formula for frustration. It just won't
Mhm.
take long, usually within the first hour of the first day of that time block, where you'll find out you thought it was going to go that way and then
Yep.
real life happened.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point that white space is vital because we do have to move things around depending on the week. And if you don't have anywhere to move them to, they just aren't going to get done. So I think that white space part is huge.
Yeah, you're on the right track for sure, and I think that is definitely a tip that's going to weave into this because you're right. Sometimes things do need to happen at a very specific time, and other times things need to happen because they need to happen, but they could happen at a later time. And you're exactly right. If you don't have that flexibility, then everything just feels like urgent all the time,
Yeah.
which also is going to affect your cortisol level. You're going to end up in a lot of stress. Okay, so that's the first myth is don't overbake this. The second tip I'm going to throw out there is I'm a big fan of bookending your day as your starting point. And what I mean by bookending is, just like the bookshelf that's behind me, when you put books on a shelf, the bookend is what holds them in place. And I think your time block is a lot like that. So a morning routine and an evening routine are really great bookends to a time block. So if someone's getting started with, okay, I've got a great plan, how do I translate that into a time block? Try creating your bookends first. And that morning routine might be, I don't know, 90 minutes in the morning that has a set of routines that don't need to be individually time blocked, but they are the ingredients to success to launch your day. The same is going to be true to the evening routine. There's going to be a set of activities, routines that you do that help end your day really well. And I find that when I can get someone to think through their time block through the bookends first, it shapes the difference between the time we're going to really execute and the time we're going to sleep, because sleep turns out to be one of the most important ingredients in our time block. Are you a fan of the bookends, Kathryn?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I also say it's good to have a time when you're going to actually arrive at the office or wherever you work Because I do find that people, if they aren't organized with that, they might show up at 7:30, they might show up at 10, and then there's no real way to time block if you're only time blocking from 10 to 3. So you really have to have those. Hey, my plan is to be at the office at 9 every day, whatever that is for you. For me, it's 8, but you have to have a start and an end, not only just what happens when you get home, but also at the office. Because if not, you're never going to meet your time block. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, the way you just described that, I want to give a visual for folks that maybe haven't gone through this practice before, where they have that, start time, the idea that that's when I show up for my work, or the end time. That's when I need to transition and get home to whatever that evening routine is. Think about it if you're an athlete. Every game, and you can pick football, you can pick baseball, you can pick basketball. There's a scheduled start to this game. And that scheduled start allows us to know everything we've got to do to prepare for the start of that game. And if you follow these sports, there's always a bit of a warm up routine. And that routine is designed to get you optimized for that starting point, so that when the whistle blows, or the, horn goes off, or whatever we've done to kick off this game, we're actually ready to play. So I love the way that you phrase that. And so I think that's the importance of your morning routine, is it's preparing you for that start time. It's getting you in the mindset and the energy level you need to really execute with excellence. And if you don't have that firm start time, then your morning routine doesn't even have boundaries and definition to it. It's just kind of well, these are things I kind of get done until I'm finished with them. Well, things tend to take the amount of time we give them. So give them a firm boundary, because you've got a firm start time. That's a great place to start. Okay, then tell me about so now we've got these bookends to the day. We know when the morning routine ends and the day starts, and we know when the day ends, so we can shift into the evening routines. Now let's define the middle a little bit. Where do you go next in between these bookends as you're defining your time block?
So for me, I try to think about the time of the day. So when am I really good at getting done tasks? When is my client time? And I try to do bigger blocks first, right? So in the morning, it's a good time for me to meet with my team and set up the day. It's a good time of the day for me to get some tasks done, to get some follow-ups done, to meet with my regional. So when are those rough times of the day that I should put in the smaller time blocks? So that's where I start.
Great. That's great. Yeah, I think if you're listening and you're starting to think about that, some of those decisions can be starting with simple things of where is my energy best used throughout the day. If I need to do those tasks, and you're really better at getting those done when your energy is high, then that's an important thought about whether you'll do them in the morning or the afternoon. I've got a thought on that one. I'll come back to it, but it's a great place to start that thought. And the other that I think you hinted at is also think about the other people. So whether it's a team, you talked about them, you talked about your regional or your customers, it's possible that the reason you'll choose certain activities in your time block at certain times is because it's best for them. You know when you're most likely to reach them. You know when you're most likely to connect with them. You know when they're going to be most engaged with you. So you choose things around the strategy of that as well. And often, I think what you and I find is that there are themes to these days. Certain days of the week have certain themes. You'll find out that on Monday, there's a certain theme that every Monday has, a certain theme that every Wednesday has, a theme for every Friday. So thinking through those themes strategically ahead of time might allow you to create a time block to where those themes actually happen on certain days at certain times, just like you described with, I come in and meet with my
Mhm.
team in the morning. So have you been able to theme your days? And if you have, give some examples of that.
Yeah. So, for example, Fridays uh, can be, hey, I'm going to make sure I get out to all my pre-approvals. So that's a big pre-approval day. Whereas I think Wednesdays can be a day that I do things like teach classes. And I know it's a typically slower day of the week. So that's what I'm going to try to do certain tasks that might be better for agents to be at, like a
Mm.
continuing education class. because I know that that's going to be a slower day for them just because here we have tours on Tuesday, Thursday. So I'm going to avoid those days for agent follow-ups, agent classes, things like that. So that's where the other person's schedule really comes into play. So that's
That's
a
great.
little bit of theme stuff. Monday is like organization, what's the week going to look like? And it's a little bit of chaos because we get a lot more phone calls. So keep that in mind for both Monday and Friday, more white space on those days. So I do try to protect those days based on the time block.
That's really great. That's really great. Okay, so you've got some macro because you looked at the week, you know the days in which your audience is maybe better available or not based on whether it's your team or your partners or your customers. Um, but you've also touched on earlier that where your energy flows the best. So let's divide this day. Let's say at some point in the middle of the day, we're going to need some fuel. And for most of us, that's called a lunch break. And hopefully you're doing something healthy on a lunch break. I'm a big fan of that's when I like to get my workout in because I like the recharge that I feel in the middle of the day. Others of you wake up at dark 30 and get your workout in first thing in the morning. Nothing wrong with that either. I even know folks that tell me, no, that's the way I finish my day. That's how I kind of release all the stress of the day before I go home, so I don't bring that stress home with my family. I think everyone knows their own psychology on this one and what motivates them to do it. But if in the middle of that day you take a break and you're going to refuel in some way, hopefully with something that's generally healthy to eat, if you've done that, it creates this nice little division point, almost like a halftime in the game. And our friend Todd Bookspan, really embraced this idea when he developed his brand 10 years ago called Win by Noon. And the ideology behind his thinking was, okay, if I've got my bookends to the day and noon represents this halftime for me, what are the activities I would intentionally design to do by noon to where I already feel like I've won the day and everything else I do from here is just, you know, cream. It's just bonus.
Mhm.
We're living, ahead of the game. And so describe some of those examples to our audience if they're looking for, okay, well then I've got this window between my morning routine and the halftime. What would be some examples of proactive activities they could embrace to have that spirit of feeling like they won by noon?
That could be reviewing your business plan, making calls to clients, making calls to realtors, getting what else? Getting loans, let's call it that way, following up with those people that were on the fence. So, really getting all that out of the way so that afternoon is open for that reactive activity.
That's a great word. And I think that is exactly where I would go with this is think about looking at your list of things that you would hope to accomplish on any given day and try to think through the ones that are proactive, the things that as you do them, you have a high degree of control over both the activity and the result, versus things that are reactive, where someone's bringing you something and expecting you to deal with it, whether it's a problem they have or an opportunity they have. Reactive doesn't mean negative. It just means, okay, I've got to deal with that. And so that could be the email that landed in your inbox or the voicemail that you got or the person who came up and knocked on your door and said, hey, do you have a few minutes? It's really great if you have some time in your day that is defined by proactive activities, the things that I'll be really proud of myself at the end of the day if I get these done, versus reactive activities of I'll make someone else really happy if I get these things done. And don't confuse those folks. We're all servants at heart. At least I hope you are. But the truth is that too often, if we're not clear on that, we jump right into servant mode. And guess who pays the price for that at the end of the day? And before you decide to think, oh, yeah, that's me, I pay the price, I'll push that even further. I'll bet I know what happens for most of us who are entrepreneurs at the end of the day. The ones who pay the price are the ones that we didn't get home to for Little League practice or for dinner or for just the meaningful time to connect. We called them and said, hey, the day went crazy. I'm going to be a little late. But a little late is consistently late. And it's not a little late, it's a lot late. This tends to happen when we don't put definition around those proactive and reactive activities up front. If I know that I've made commitments in that proactive time to those activities, even when someone brings me something that needs me to react, how wonderful is it that 9 times out of 10, when I tell them, oh, great, I've got some time right after lunch where I could work on that and get back to you. 9 times out of 10, the answer is great. As long as I can get a response, that's perfect. It's pretty rare that someone brings me a reactive activity that their expectation is, you better drop everything right now and get this done. So I'm really glad you described it that way, because I think that's what I want our audience to think through in a time block is, what would I do in those morning hours that would be intentionally proactive to actually free me up to be reactive in the
Mhm.
afternoon. And you hit it on the head. That's the white space. That's where you can really be flexible to the meeting you didn't know you were going to have, the call you didn't know you were going to return, or the deal you didn't know you were going to put together. You got to have that time in your time block, and afternoons are a great time for that.
Absolutely. One other tip that I want to bring up is you have to have this line up with your systems. So, a really good example of this is I use Calendly, and there's lots of different calendar systems. But when I send the link to the clients for them to plan a time to meet, guess when that time is? It's in the afternoon because I don't want it to mess with my morning time. So I have one day a week that people can meet with me in the morning via video, and that's it. Other than that, I'm not doing in-person appointments in the morning because I try to protect that time for all the other things that I have to do on the proactive side. So client appointments go typically between 1 and 5, and I bookend those as well so that all of a sudden your calendar doesn't end up full with things that you weren't anticipating. So you have to have your systems line up with your time block so that it also works because the client, if you give them too many choices, they're going to take whatever you have. So you really have to protect those. It's okay if it takes a couple days to get in my office. That's fine, but it's going to be at certain times that work for me.
Yeah, it is amazing. As folks who want to serve people, our instinct is to, let them control the decision making. But the truth is, again, most of the time, and I don't mean like 51% of the time, I mean like 91% of the time, they'll take what you give them and they're fine with it. So
Hmm.
giving them direction like that is really helpful. And a productivity tool like Calendly, and most folks I think know what that is, it's a great way to allow them to access a spot in your time block that you'd already decided was a really good spot for that type of activity should someone want to fill it. So you can't get there unless you've done the design work ahead of time, which means you've thought about, where are the bookends to my day? Where do I need to get that reset in the middle of the day? What activities am I going to get done before noon so that that availability for them in the afternoon is not just available in my calendar, but I'm ready for it. I've already knocked out so much and I'm ready to go. I've had my meetings, I've made my calls. I'm now ready for focus with this person who wanted to get on my calendar. That's a great example of that, Kathryn. Okay, so we're talking about time block within these bookends, but I want to make sure that we touch on how this fits as well in the flow of someone's week, because some of you every week has the same flow and the same routine, unless there's that random event like you've got a holiday in there or you've got a conference in there, something's going to throw it off, or maybe it's time for a family vacation. Others of you, your weeks have certain flows from one week to another that shift a little bit. Some of you are in different markets from one week to another. Some of you have different business models that deserve certain focus one week and a different version of the model another week. If you do, one of the tips I learned early on was it's okay to create an ideal week A and an ideal week B. And maybe the ideal week A is for that week where the cadence is similar. And so when you're going into that week, is this an A week or a B week? And if it's not, you've already got ideal week B that gives you a sense of, oh, yeah, I've got to plan differently for this week. I know this happens a lot for me in the business model that I run. And so I've seen it work really well for those of you who have this interesting version of cadence in your week. And if that's you, give yourself permission. It's okay to design two ideal weeks, and one's you're in the office week and one's maybe you're out on the road week, because a lot of you are running businesses where you have to get out and see your clients. And so rather than being in and out of your office all week, maybe this is a opportunity to think through, I could get more done if this was just my in office week. If the weekly version of that doesn't work for you, then maybe look at it through the frame of the days. Maybe certain days of the week are the right days. You mentioned, the realtors are out on tour on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That could create a cadence for you where you say, "Oh, okay, my ideal week looks different Monday, Wednesday, Friday than it does Tuesday, Thursday." So I create a totally different cadence on those days, where maybe I'm not in the office as much because my audience doesn't expect me to be in the audience. So that's my time to get out. These are things you can think through when you're really being proactive with your calendar and using a time block. And any other thoughts on that one, Kathryn?
No, I like that idea. I think it can also be, um, places you go and the seasons because there's a different season. Let's say if it's summer and you've got the kids, or if it's winter and you go to a different location for the winter. So you can adjust as needed. And I think we all have a little bit different version of that. Right now, I'm at our other house and my time block here looks different. So I think it's okay to make that official. I think we forget that we always think, oh, we have one. No, you can have three, you can have two, you can change it. So again, write in pencil, not in pen.
That's a great way to phrase that. And I did do that for years. You're right. When my kids were in the house, that did dictate seasonal time blocks. And you're 100% right. The way that I managed that was quite different. So the cadence of my quarterly focus plan began a rhythm that I began to then revisit my time block in light of that change of season. Because as I move from the second quarter into the third quarter, I'm in the middle of the summer. Maybe my summer time block does need to look different. I mentioned the example of, now you're late for Little League practice. Well, back when I was coaching kids, my time block definitely looked different because the bookends got tightened up a little bit because I had different routines when I'm the coach that the kids are waiting,
Mhm.
they're counting on me, I should say, to be at that field waiting for them, not showing up after they're already there. So, yeah, you're exactly right. I think those seasons of life throughout the year help dictate modified versions of your time block, and have some fun with that, because what you're really essentially doing is it's no different than a budget with your money. A budget with your money is simply a tool to help tell your money where it's supposed to go. A time block is simply a tool to help tell you where you're supposed to be according to the plans you set and the commitments that you made. It's not reasonable to make plans and even translate them into commitments, whether that's with your teammates or your partners or your customers, and then find yourself not able to honor those because you just didn't decide to discipline where they fit in your calendar. So, this is an integrity check. Think of it as a tool that helps you do what you said you would do. And that makes it a beautiful thing, not just another task, not just another thing
Mhm.
to get done. It's actually a great resource for honoring your word.
Yeah. And I also used to think that everything in my plan went into my time block. So my time block looked kind of weird because on Saturday I might have send letters to friends. Da, 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 da. Instead of saying, hey, work on my personal life plan accounts, that can be, it doesn't have to be so specific like you brought up earlier of brush your teeth. If you kind of have some general time blocks that maybe encapsulate a few things, because guess what? I'm not going to do exactly that 30-minute time block on a Saturday. That's going to look a little different. So as long as I kind of know, hey, here's the general time of, I work on the podcast on the weekends. Well, that's kind of in there. It might be Saturday morning, but it might also be Sunday night. It just depends on how that weekend goes. So you can make it work for you. Again, it's a tool. I don't want people to see it as like, okay, great. I'm going to wake up at 9 on Saturday and get these 17 things done. And all of a sudden it starts to create stress for you. Don't look at it like that.
I think what you're touching on, and maybe this is a good place to wrap up the episode, is you have to know your own personality. You have to be able to look in the mirror and you have to know what is going to work well for you. And so the place I'll leave this is I'm going to call it macro managing versus micromanaging. If your personality does well with macro managing, I think the way you were describing that will make sense for them, which is give yourself some latitude. These are all activities that fit within a general bushel of similar activities and you intend to get them done, but the specific moment, the specific amount of time isn't critical, is they just need to get done on a Saturday or on a Sunday. So you're macro managing. And if that's your personality and that keeps your stress level down, then embrace that. Other folks I've noticed, because I get to coach a lot of different personalities, it causes them stress if they haven't thought through the specific punch down at the specific time in a certain order. And some of us may think, gosh, that seems really, I don't know, uptight, but it really turns out to be personality. They actually lower stress when it's like, I just need to make sure everything's in my calendar and I need to knock it out just like I said I would. Know yourself. That's going to be my take on this one.
Hmm.
If you know that's going to work best for you, then embrace your natural style and design your system to work best for you. And that'll determine whether you're a macro manager or a micromanager. I don't want to make those good or bad, right or wrong. Just know yourself. And once you do, embrace the system. Because at the end of the day, the accountability piece falls back on your own conscience. And as long as you know, I knew what I said I would do this week, both to myself and to others, and I generally followed through on those commitments to a level that I'm satisfied with. Well, then the time block worked for you. You did a great job because you thought about it ahead of time. And now you can look back with some satisfaction of saying, job well done. And hopefully you'll embrace the time block then as a habit because, again, I think I'm at a place now where I've been doing this so long. My time block is somewhat ingrained in my brain, Kathryn. I do keep it. I still do the exercise because it's just the habit I've created. But if you took away the sheet, I think I'd still run a time block. It's just how I'm
Yeah.
wired.
Hey, one more thing to bring up, share your time block. Because if your team doesn't know that you're going to have on time for 2 hours on every Tuesday, they're they're not going to know. How are they going to know not to interrupt you? If they know that you're supposed to be making calls from 9 to 10 on Fridays and Tuesdays, they're going to be like, "Hey, why aren't you making your phone calls?" So make sure you're sharing that with the people, not only on the Calendly, but your coach, your team, shoot, your spouse even. So I think that's an important thing to just wrap this one up
Yeah,
with a
I'm
little
glad
bit
I'm
as
glad you
well.
said that. You just brought back a memory of when I was maybe sitting in a seat at a branch and making those calls. I used to hang a do not disturb sign on my door, and I let my team know I'm not trying to be persnickety, but if I don't focus and dedicate this time, just 90 minutes each day to make the outbound calls that I know I'm responsible for, then I'm not holding up my end of the deal to all of you. So even though I'm making myself unavailable to all of you, my ideology was 90 minutes out of a 9-hour day seemed like a reasonable amount of time for me to be unavailable so that I could do the one thing that I'm most responsible for, which was to drive new business to my team.
Mhm.
So you're exactly right. Sharing that with them helps them embrace it. And yeah, maybe they will then encourage you, like, hey, isn't this your time? Or they'll also respect it when they're like, oh, I don't want to bother Kathryn right now. I know she's making her calls. I'll get back to her in another hour. That becomes a really nice way for your team to embrace the time block with you. So great way to finish. Listen, folks, there's probably 100 other things we could talk about with time blocking. I hope what we've inspired you to do today is to think a little bit more lightly about the time block if it's caused you stress in the past, or if it's one of those things that's never caused you stress in the past and it's just that time of year where it needs to be revisited, that you got inspired today to go back and say, okay, I can't let other people dictate my calendar. I've got to design it in the way that I've created a plan so that I'm going to be really satisfied with the results I get. Either way, I hope this episode has given you some encouragement to get out there and execute with excellence in the year that we are just kicking off. And Kathryn, I always enjoy these episodes with you. I, of course, look forward to our interviews as well, but it's fun to dig into a tactical topic like this. So thanks for making this one happen. And thanks to all of you for listening, as you do each and every week. We're here on Apple each week. We're on Spotify. You can find us on Audible, and of course, the video on YouTube. And we love it when you comment. We love it when you share because it lets other people know that these are valuable episodes, and we want to continue to record valuable episodes, not just for you, but for some folks we maybe haven't even met yet. And we look forward to following in the new year. So make it a great day, and we'll see you on next week's episode.